our third recording in this series on how to create video lessons for your students in school. And if you are new to watching this, you probably should go back and watch the first two segments in my YouTube channel to kind of get caught up to this point, because we're basically going to pick up where we left off. And what you're going to notice here is if I go back to the default screen here, I forget where we were a minute ago when we left off the last video, but you're going to see lots of new imported video footage that I'm going to be pulling from today. And essentially what I did was I went into File and said Import Movies, and what I did was I connected a backup drive. So what I had was video clips that I had recorded during this session of our science fair, and I have raw footage here as well as some green screen footage. And we're going to be working with green screen footage today to kind of capture some of that information. And so this will show you some of the really cool ins and outs of our ability to use iMovie. Now, some of the drawbacks to iMovie is if you use transitions as well as green screens within your video, the transitions don't appear to work. And I don't know if it's just a glitch in the program or I'm trying to overdo what the program was intended for. So I want to show you a workaround. If you remember in our previous video, we left off with these little clips showing different parts of our science fair. And so what I want to do is go into some video of some students discussing their project. And as I'm looking through here, I actually have a student that I interviewed on green screen right here. And then I also have her showing me her project at this point right here. So I want to do some advanced editing at this point. I want to be able to utilize more than what iMovie wants me to do. And so I'm going to show you some workarounds that I've done. And so what I'm going to do is go under File, and I'm going to say New Project. Okay, and I'm going to keep it widescreen, and this is just, I'm going to call this project Green Screen Layers. And that's just a reminder to me that I'm working around some limitations right now, and I want to be able to do more with this program than what it's intended to do. Now, in this background green screen, I could actually use some green screen backgrounds, and these green screen backgrounds are motion backgrounds that I could use, and I'm kind of playing one right here with some smoke backgrounds. I have other ones with a photographer, and I have one with a high-speed chase going on with a car. But in this particular segment, I actually want to use just a pretty standard green screen behind the student. So I want to use some that actually have come with iMovie. The ones down here that I was showing you are actually free and available if you do a little Google searching and you look for video backgrounds or green screen backgrounds. You'll find some free ones out there. You'll also find some really cool ones that you can purchase. But what I want to do is click on this little earth icon, and you'll notice there's different things I could use here. These top ones right here, the curtain, the organic, the blobs, the underwater, all of these actually have motion to them. And then we also have flat ones we could use, like the gradient, industrial, pinstripes, and so on. What I want to use for this particular student this time is I'm going to grab blobs, and I'm going to put it here. Now, if you remember, my default import in iMovie is 4 seconds. So when I click on here, it tells me that's 4 seconds in length. Well, I want to go back to my video trainings events and go down here where the student is talking about her project. And I'm going to click on it, and if you notice, she's talking for about 1 minute and 23 seconds. And so I want to go ahead and make this background about 1 minute and we'll say 40 seconds. So I want it to be longer than the actual interview that I give her. And so now I'm going to grab the entire segment. I'm just going to click on it and hit Command A. I'm going to select it and drag it up. I'm not so interested if it's at the beginning or not at this point, so I'm just going to drop it in here and say green screen. And so what that's going to do is drop my interview on top with her. And so what that allows it to do is give me the background image that I'm looking for. So when I play it. Okay, so Sydney, I was looking at your board. It's a pretty awesome idea. Can you give me an idea what gave you the idea to do what you did? Okay, if you notice, there's a little bit of ghosting around my hand as I'm talking to her, and you see a little ghosting around her as well. Basically, that's a lighting issue that's happening as a result of the lights I'm using with my green screen. And so there is some editing we can do. And one of those editing things we can do is go in here and click and say video adjustments. And I can actually adjust some of the aspects of this video. And I'm actually adjusting not the background image, but our images on top of the green screen. And so we can hopefully eliminate some of that ghosting. The problem is if you draw back on things, you start seeing the background image come through, and that's not really professional looking. So we're going to try to limit that as much as we can, and maybe it's just adjusting some colors. And it just takes a little bit of working with it a little bit to get what you're after. And sometimes it's effective, sometimes it's not. And so right here I'm just pulling a little bit of red out. That's actually not a bad thing because we have a lot of red in our background. You can adjust some of the exposure, and so that kind of drops some of it out. I don't want to make it look too unrealistic. But we see this same effect being utilized, especially in weather forecasts on the news, where they use a green screen and then they put the footage of the weather information behind them, such as the states or the country or radar and stuff like that. So what I want to do is kind of play this out. So Sydney, I was looking at your board. It's a pretty awesome idea. Can you give me an idea what gave you the idea to do what you did? Well, okay, I'm still not real crazy about all the red in our faces, so I'm going to go back into video adjustments again and try to pull some of that red out. Just seems like we're a little too much red in our facial and skin tones and stuff like that. What I want to do now is go ahead and flatten this image, and so I'm going to say share, and I'm going to say export movie, and I want to do it as high definition because I want to maintain the resolution of what's going on. The more times I export and import video, I lose some quality. So I'm going to save this to my desktop, and I'm just going to name this student interview, and I'm going to put flattened. And that means I'm going to basically flatten the green screen image and the background image so that it's one video. And what that will allow me to do is to go ahead and add some transitions. I can have more workarounds as far as trimming the video and stuff like that. So if you notice right now, this export is going to take about 23 minutes or 26. It's going to jump around a little bit to actually export this file. And part of that is because it's high definition. So I'm going to pause the video now, allow it to export, then we'll come back to this video and show you what it looks like as it's as we bring it in. Okay, so now the video has exported as a flattened file, and now I need to re-import it into my project that I started. So I'm going to go back to Project Library, and so then I'm going to go back to my segment here somewhere. Video lesson trainings. So we're back to where we started, and so now what I want to do is in my raw video footage down here, what I'm going to do is say File, Import Movie, and remember it was on my desktop, so I look on the desktop and here it is, Student Interview Flattened, and I wanted to import it, full original size, and import, and it's going to give me some time to process. So it says it'll be in about 1 minute, so we'll pause the video while it processes, and then we'll come back once it's finished. Okay, so now then we've imported the video, and what's nice about it is the videos that are more recent will show up at the top side of your screen, and so you'll see the flattened image here. If you notice, it's not in two different layers now, but it's just one flattened image. So what I want to do now is capture where we start the conversation. What gave you the idea to do what you did? Yeah, what proposed? Okay, if you notice here at the beginning, we don't see us in the background because it flattened it and we didn't bring it in at the very beginning. Now that was intentional because I want some play area. So when I come in here, I'm going to grab where we start seeing us. I'm going to drag across all the way to okay, probably going to clip that out, but we'll kind of keep that there for now, and we'll drag it up here and drop it. And so as we come back up here and we play the video, it's going to look like this. Okay, so Sydney, I was looking at your board. Okay, so if you notice, the music that we have didn't fall past our original video, so I'm going to go ahead and drag it across, and I'm going to bring it back some, and I want to double click it and go into audio, and I want it to fade out manually at about 4 seconds or so, so that's good. And so I'm going to also put in a transition. And this is part of the reason why we did the export movie and flattened it and brought it back in, because you can't use your transport you can't use your transitions between an image that has a green screen if you haven't flattened it yet. And that kind of came by trying to figure out some of the difficulties with some of the iMovie things. And so this is how I kind of came up with it. So I'm going to do a spin in, and I'm going to drop it right here. And so it's going to look like this. Okay, so Sydney, I was looking at your board. It's a pretty awesome idea. Can you give me an idea what gave you the idea to do what you did?
Well, I couldn't help noticing when you cut up apples and pears, they seem to get brown really fast. And so I wanted to find a way that I could somehow prevent that from happening to my fruit.
Okay, when you were showing me that you had ascorbic acid and some other things, what were the other two items? Okay, so if you remember, we also had some footage of her in front of her board. So I'm going to scroll down here in my raw footage video. I'm going to double click this so it shows me more of the footage. And I want to go down here where Sydney is talking. And so pass by it here. Come back up. Okay, so we have her talking right here about her board. Kind of get an idea of what she's saying here.
I wanted to see which preservative would best prevent the rotting and oxidational browning in fruits. And so I tested it on apples, pears, and peaches with sugar syrup, lemon juice, and ascorbic acid. And I recorded my information in a journal and in my research paper, and displayed my pictures and more information about my project on my board. I conducted the experiment for 3.
Okay, so she's actually discussing her experiment in the green screen footage that we flattened. So I really don't want her talking over herself. That would seem kind of strange because it's going to break into her and you're going to see her talking a little bit. I don't mind having her image, but I want to focus more on the process of what she did. So I'm going to find a section of the video where you see her so we know it's her in her project. And I'm going to get where she turns towards her board, which is right about here. And I'm going to grab a selection where we can kind of see her stuff. And this is going to be called a cutaway. We see this oftentimes in the news where reporters discussing something and then it cuts away and shows a little bit of what they're talking about, then it comes back to the reporter. So I'm going to grab it and come and drop it right up here, and I'm going to let go. And instead of saying green screen this time, I'm going to say cutaway. And so what's really handy about that is I'm also going to reduce the audio. So I'm going to go up here in this part of the clip where she's talking about her board, and I'm going to reduce the audio to none because I don't want her talking over herself. And now when I come in and play, it's going to do this.
Well, I couldn't help noticing when you cut up apples and pears, they seem to get brown really fast. And so I wanted to find a way that I could somehow prevent that from happening to my fruit.
Okay, now when we came in and brought her in, it actually was coming in a little bit too quick into the video. So I'm going to slide it over. And I'll just keep kind of grabbing it and pulling it. And also it came in pretty abruptly. So I want to show you some areas where we can kind of make this cutaway work a little bit better. So I'm going to go in here and double click. And I want to do a fade, which means it's going to gradually come into the video, and then it's also going to gradually pull out. So here I'm going to fade it right here. And that means it's going to take a second or so for it to kind of fully come into play. And we'll kind of see what happens here. So when we go back into it.
When you cut up apples and pears, they seem to get brown really fast. And so I wanted to find a way that I could somehow prevent that from happening to my fruit. Okay, when you were showing me that you had ascorbic acid and some other things, what were the other two items you tested? Sugar syrup and lemon juice.
Okay, so right here, I want to basically trim out the rest of this interview because it's going to get kind of boring. So I want to fade into her going back to her board. So I'm going to find a good stopping position, so I got to listen to it a little bit. Okay, so did you ever sample them afterwards and taste them to see, hey, this is something I would really use or not?
No, I did not taste them. They were quite rotted after sitting for 3 days on my counter. Okay. So it was very lenient.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right here. Well, I say I'm going to. I'm looking for a good pause in the conversation. So right there is pretty good. Now what I did was I hit my space bar and you'll see the red line right there. And what I'm going to do is control click or double click, and I'm going to hit split clip. And so what that does is divide it here. So I got 2 segments now. I'm going to delete this last segment because I have a portion of her interview, and then I'm going to come back in here and find some things about her project.
In my project, I wanted to see which preservative would best prevent the rotting and oxidational browning.
Okay, if you'll notice down here in the clip, the little orange segment is the area where she left off talking a minute ago. And so there's a few things I could do there actually, and it would work out okay, but I'm going to try to find a portion after this where she discussed a little bit different things about her project.
On my board, I conducted the experiment for 3 days.
Okay, so I'm going to find a pause in her conversation
Board.
right there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight right here and drag it over here. And I'm going to pull it up into the video where we trimmed it off just a second ago. So I'm going to grab it and pull up on it. And then I'm going to create a transition. And I want to do a cross zoom. So I'll drop it right here. And I want that cross zoom to last about a second. So I'm going to double click it and hit 1 second. And now I'm going to play it. And so let's go back to the beginning here and just play it out. Give me an idea what gave you the idea to do what you did.
Well, I couldn't help noticing when you cut up apples and pears, they seem to get brown really fast. And so I wanted to find a way that I could somehow prevent that from happening to my fruit.
Okay. When you were showing me that you had ascorbic acid and some other things, what were the other 2 items you tested?
Sugar syrup and lemon juice.
Okay, so did you ever sample them afterwards and taste them and see, hey, this is something I would really use or not?
No, I did not taste them. They were quite rotted after sleeping for 3 days on my counter.
Okay.
I conducted the experiment for 3 days and had some very worthwhile results.
Okay, so if you notice, she said she conducted her experiment for 3 days, and then she repeated it in this segment. So I want to kind of trim that out.
3 days.
So I'm going to pause it right there, right click, and hit split clip. And then I'm going to select that first part and delete it. So now I want to come back and watch it again. Still have a small portion of that, so I want to trim it again. So right click again, hit split clip. And I'm going to delete that first part again. And so we'll play again.
And had some very worthwhile results, as you can see in the pictures below.
Okay, so we'll kind of, when it breaks back towards her, okay, I like having a little bit of her humor in there, so I'm going to trim it off right here. So split clip again. And so let's try adding a little bit of music as we start coming into that. So I'm going to go back to my music note and stay in jingles. And I really want this whole segment right here is about 10 seconds long. So what I want to do is find a good transition portion of music that can kind of pull into this a little bit and also work into the second segment of the video that I put in. And so I want probably about 20 seconds to do that. So I'm going to look at some of my options here. Okay, so of the ones that I kind of went through just now, I think Catwalk's probably the better one. So I'm going to grab it and just drop it right about here because it kind of got silent in that portion. And I'm going to double click it and I'm going to make the audio fade into. So basically the music's going to gradually build up. And so my fade in will go about 4 seconds. So let's kind of see where it's playing out.
Okay. And had some very worthwhile results, as you can see in the pictures below.
Okay, so we do have more music we can pull. So what I'm going to do also is I'm going to take the clip itself, double click it, and do the audio. And she ends the audio or the video kind of laughing a little bit. So I'm going to let that fade out a little bit. So I'm going to say manual, and let her laugh kind of fade into the music as it's pulling up, and say done. So here we go again.
See if the picture is cool.
Okay, and then we'll add additional clips in our next video segment. So in this video segment, basically you've learned how to use green screening, you've learned how to use cutaways, and we split some clips to kind of make everything blend together. And remember again, if we green screen and we want to use other effects like the cutaways or the transitions, then we really need to export that file, let it flatten, bring it back in, and then we have more editing capabilities. Okay? Hope you enjoyed this segment, and be looking forward to my next segment where we are looking at video lesson 4. Okay? Hope y'all enjoyed it.